So Kelly Baumgartner or Kelly Baums, as you are
Yeah, Kelly
online.
Baums.
Introduce yourself. Tell me about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Kelly Baums, and I am an ADHD coach and content creator. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Okay, and I gotta know, I gotta ask, what made you want to reach out to me? You're the first person ever asked to share with me after you saw my interview with Ryan.
Oh, well, it was Ryan who connected us. He was the one,
Ah,
mentioned that he had done an interview with you in one of he's my mentor coach. And he was like, oh, I'd be happy to connect you guys if you want to just do a podcast thing. And yeah. So I was like, sure, why not?
okay, great. And do
Yeah.
you have you looked at all into kind of what I do and what I talk about?
I listened to your podcast with Ryan. Yeah.
Okay, so you know that I kind of am talking a lot about the medications.
Yeah.
Great. And where well, first, I'm kind of curious. Can you tell me more about being an ADHD coach and how you got into that, and
Yeah.
what's involved in being an ADHD coach?
Yeah, sure. So I got into it. I opened my practice about a year ago, but I was just diagnosed when I was 30. So that was about 4 years ago. And the diagnosis was like a total reframe of my whole life. It blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, everything finally makes sense now. And once I got diagnosed, I started seeking support for that. And I was seeing a therapist, but the therapist wasn't really like helpful on the ADHD side of things. So I thought, well, I'm going to look into getting a coach. And I realized that there were no coaches around me. And then I also realized that like a lot of the accommodations that I researched that coaches were doing with people were things that I was already doing with myself. Because in my years of therapy, I had, hit my head up against the unknown ADHD wall for so long that I had found like workarounds for myself.
Can you
And
give me an
so,
example of some of those?
um, gosh, I mean, just like reminders everywhere and like to do lists and like kind of like the basics, using timers for myself or even
Like
like,
Pomodoro method kind of
yeah,
timers? Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Or like even, yeah, just like visual stuff everywhere. Like the way that I organize my space is very intentional. So, like, I do not fold my clothes because I think that laundry is like the bane of my existence. And the big thing that stops me from putting away is the folding process. So instead of folding clothes, I skip that step and I just put everything in a bin that's labeled with what type of clothes are in it, unfolded, and then I steam it the day of when I wear it instead. So, like little accommodations like that, I was already doing for myself. And so I thought, like, I was like, why don't I become a coach? And I was also in the middle of like exploring different career path options because for 10 years before that, I was a classroom teacher for 3 years and then I was a school librarian for 7 and knew it wasn't where I wanted to be forever. So I was like exploring different options. And when I would talk to my friends and my fiance and family members about it, they'd be like, you're really good at talking to people. You'd be great as like a therapist or a coach or something like that. And I was like, well, I just finished one master's degree. I don't want to go back and get another. So I looked into coaching and then I ended up being an ADHD coach.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And sometimes the best way to teach yourself is to teach others.
Hmm.
It forces you to clarify what you're trying to do and make it
Yeah.
clear to others, and you identify it to yourself in that process too.
Yeah, yeah, I for sure feel like sometimes when I'm talking to my clients, I'm just talking to myself. And I oftentimes talk to myself like I am my own client.
Yeah, that's a good way to take care of yourself.
Hmm.
I'm curious what you think of. Is it a saturated market? Because I mean, I wrote a book about ADD and the medication, and I've tried to promote it online and have been therefore my algorithm is really tuned to ADD and ADHD. And from my observance, ADHD coaching is a fully saturated market.
Hmm.
Do you find it to be competitive, difficult to find clients, or what do you feel about that?
Mm.
It's sort of like trending up and it's an industry. What is it like to
Yeah,
be in that?
I definitely can't. probably give the most accurate reflection of that because I sort of had a jump start into this career change because I already, prior to making the transition from one career to ADHD coaching, I already had a really big social media following. And so I went from making like comedy videos to talking about ADHD now and then to fully talking about ADHD once I knew I was going to make the career change. And that made it so my schedule immediately filled up when I started coaching. So honestly, I can't say. I know that like I have people in my cohort, there's some people who are coaching like as their main gig. There are some who totally like haven't pursued anything, and there are some who do it part-time. But yeah, I don't know if I have an accurate reflection of what
Well, I think your
it's
answer
like.
kind of reflects that maybe what makes a successful ADHD coach is good marketing and
Mhm.
social media following
Yeah, I do
and
think
being
that.
funny. I mean, you do comedy videos,
Yeah, I
having a
think
good time.
that it helps because anyone that you talk to, it's, I mean, it's kind of like it's hard to find a good therapist. But if I could like see my therapist talking online for, you know, days before picking her as my therapist, I would probably be more likely to choose her. And I think that's kind of what happens here
Yeah,
is
I think
people know me before they know me.
yeah, people you follow, they're kind of your friends. You get a daily check-in with that friend and things like that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And did you get the certification from like Russell Barkley's organization?
I did it through ADCA, ADD Coach Academy.
Mm.
So I graduated there from in June. They have you start your practice a little bit before you finish. And then right now I'm in the process of getting my ICF, which is the International Coaching Foundation certification. So I just turned in all my stuff for that.
And that's like general life coaching, not just ADHD
Yeah.
coaching.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Because I've never been coached or anything like that. How would you summarize your job
Mm.
like that?
Yeah. So, like a session would, just to imagine like what a session might look like is client comes in and we talk about like what's going well for you right now. Because typically with ADHD, we have the negativity bias. So, we're like constantly looking at the things that aren't going well. So, trying to create a pattern of noticing what is going well is really good for us. And then we'll talk about what's not going well or what's a challenge right now. And then we'll try to get understanding of the full story. And then we'll come up with some possible solutions. So then the client will walk away with an idea of a direction forward, or like homework or an experiment to try. So we do that. But then on top of that, I offer accountability. So I'm in contact with my clients every day and just offering little bits of encouragement. I do group coaching. So then clients can drop in during the week if they need a little extra boost or they want a body double or like ask a question or just like hang
What is
out.
body doubling?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Sometimes you say the things and you're like, oh, yes, not everyone is attuned to all
Yeah,
these
I've seen
terms.
that. I just haven't like I just kind of is it
Yeah.
just being present?
Body doubling is a tool that you can use for like external accountability. So it would just be, for example, if I am having a hard time getting myself to do my work, like check my emails, but my fiance is like downstairs washing the dishes or like studying, I might bring my computer down and just sit next to him and kind of like be in his productive energy to help me get stuff done. So you can do
Hmm.
that like with other people in real life. You can do it with strangers in a coffee shop. You could do it virtually on there's body doubling websites, but I think it's one of the most effective tools for
No, I'm
productivity.
I'm totally the opposite.
Really?
Totally. Yeah, I work the best completely alone.
Hmm.
And sometimes if I'm writing on my computer or something and my wife pops in, I'm like, even if she just sits there, I'm like, you got to get out of here. I'm, I'm
Interesting.
I'm in the zone. I can't be seen. I'm like a little hermit when I get focused. I'm like, don't look at me.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's, I mean, AD. I think something that sometimes I feel like I ask is a lot of the things I see ADHD influencers say. Sometimes I think are just quirky aspects of their personality, at least because maybe I feel like the exception to a lot of rules and like an outsider in the ADHD community, especially because I'm sort of speaking against medication. you know, or advocating for handling ADHD without amphetamines is the essence of my thesis. So I always feel like an outsider in these groups too. And a lot of the things I say that happens often, I feel like I don't identify with. And then I wonder, do I really have ADHD? Because, like that example there, I've never felt that way.
I mean, I think there's lots of different, ways to experience your ADHD symptoms. And I think it's really a big spectrum. So I think that just because you've got a few things here and there that aren't relatable to most of the community, it doesn't mean that your, experiences or your way of showing up is invalid.
Oh, no, I don't think it's invalid. What I think is sometimes I wonder, are these all really ADHD? And I wonder if when people make their life ADHD, and I think about this with myself because I've chosen to also participate online specifically in the ADHD dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
and I get lost in the self-awareness loop. Sure, maybe that's ADD too. I'm like, well, this, then that, and oh, now you're doing this. And so I analyze and analyze and analyze. And I wonder if, I notice, oh, this is a little bit different about me. And
Mm-hmm.
then I take the category of things about me that I find are different than other people. And do I put that under the category of ADHD? Or is it just, I'm a little weird? I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're all a little weird.
Yeah, yeah. And I think part of, at least in the way I speak with myself, I don't like saying I have a disorder.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like saying disorder. I don't like saying deficit. By definition, deficit means not enough. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, as a child growing up, I know you're a part of the group that is being diagnosed recently.
Mm-hmm.
But they diagnosed me ADD when I was 7 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like all these authority figures saying you're not good enough, and
Mm-hmm.
that was so I'm still dealing with that. And I know I see now ADHD diagnosis being a point of empowerment for a lot of people. People are celebrating it, and
Mm-hmm.
that's I think why I feel like an outsider, because I worked so hard. I was so ashamed of it for so long, and I was so like, no, no. And I worked so hard to be like, I don't need these meds. I don't need anything. And then as soon as I did that, everyone's like, no, it's great. And I'm like, oh, come on. you know? But with that, I'm curious, like, how do you, as someone who is invested in the experience, how would you define ADHD?
um, I mean, this is like my personal way of referring to it, but I just kind of like say I have this type of brain, you know, because I know it is a disability by the ADA, and it is a um, deficit and all that stuff, all the fancy terms. But I do, I don't know, like this is my own personal opinion, but something that my fiance and I will talk about is he's a chiropractor, and he'll have people come into his practice who will say, like, I am this or I can't do this. And they identify so much with the pathology that they're actually limiting themselves more than they need to. Um, and I think for me, that's a little bit where like the word disability takes my brain. I'm not saying it's not correct for anyone. I'm just saying like it doesn't feel totally accurate for me, because I think that maybe because of the accommodations that I've been given and the way that I grew up, I was able um, I think still be in a pretty successful place right now. So I think that perhaps if I had a different upbringing, I might identify more with the idea of this being a disability. I totally
Yeah.
like talked in a circle. I'm like, where was I finding my way back to? I'm not sure.
No, I
Yeah.
followed you. I was circling with you. And
Good.
and it's kind of what I'm saying. It's like, I don't like saying, I think that the negative self-talk of reminding yourself you're disabled is equal, if not more, damaging than whatever innate deficit of attention one has.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe you're predisposed to distraction, impulsivity, and other bullet points that are defined as ADHD. But maybe telling yourself you're disabled is not good.
Yeah, I
That's
think.
that's at least where I'm at on my med freestyle, like how I have to
Well,
do it.
some days I have those days though where I'm like, okay, I really feel the other side of the argument, where like I feel so incapacitated by this brain that I have, that it makes it so much harder for me to do things and like be in this world, operate successfully in this world. And I really feel it. Like I'm like, yeah, like this is legit. This is a disability. But like I think that I see both sides of it. I think when it's well managed, it doesn't always have to feel like that, or it doesn't always feel like that every day.
Oh, that's life, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious because can we talk about medication?
Sure. Yeah.
Are you comfortable with me asking if you take medication?
Yeah. So I am like wherever the wind takes me is what I'm up for, medication wise. So it took me about probably like a year and a half working with a nurse practitioner to find the right medication to take. And that was like a tough journey to get
Sorry.
there. Maybe that's like, I don't know, another sidebar for later, but
Well,
now,
I'm really focused in it. That's my favorite topic.
yeah, yeah. Well, like there's so many directions I could go with this one question, but like right now, I've got a stimulant that I can take. I've got a non-stimulant that I can
Which
take.
which one?
Stimulant is Ritalin, and I have both a long, like an 8 hour one at a really low dose, 10 milligrams, and then I have a short acting one, a 4 hour one at a
On
somewhat low
Ritalin,
dose.
methylphenidate.
Yeah, methylphenidate.
Okay, I always figured that methylphenidate was not stimulant because it's not an amphetamine.
I think it's methamphetamine. Or sorry,
No,
methylphenidate. Sorry. It's not.
yeah,
It's
no, it's not an
Did
amphetamine.
you hear me? It's methamphetamine.
Well, Adderall is a
Wait,
carbon away from meth, but
wait, now can I Google it?
sure, yeah, you can fact check.
Is a what is the word? Is Ritalin a
Stimulant.
stimulant? I was pretty sure it was. Yeah, it is a central nervous system stimulant.
Okay, because I always put them in two categories because I took Adderall and Ritalin,
Okay.
and at least in my experience, Adderall is way more stimulating.
I had the same. The first thing I
Mm-hmm.
ever took was Adderall. And one day I felt amazing, the most productive I ever was. And the
Right.
next day I was on the floor having a panic attack. And my fiance came home, was like, what is wrong?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
I had that too, and I was like, I'm gonna figure out how to. I like this. I liked that too much. I'm gonna make this part of my identity. I will, because I started taking
oh,
Adderall when I was 15.
oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That another sidebar we could go off into if you want later is the kind of what I hear from clients and like what they like. I've noticed just a little bit of patterning around clients who take medications, start them when they're younger and when they're older. But okay, so I have two options for methylphenidate, short and long. I take atomoxetine, which is Stratterra, and that's a non-stimulant. And I'm on a super low dose of that. But that was actually the like first prescribed medication the doctor put me on because I told her I was like, I react really strongly to coffee even. I won't have more than a cup of half calf a few times a week. Like that's the most
Mm-hmm.
I can have. And she started me on Stratterra, and she was like, oh, typical for an adult human is 40 milligrams. So she put me on 40 milligrams and it blew me out of the water.
And how did that
Um,
feel? What does being blown out of the water by Stratterra feel like?
like because so Stratterra is a norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. So all of the like adrenaline, like that
Mm-hmm.
you or like all the chemicals that are released in your body when you're in like fight or flight mode, it's like
Right.
that is happening. So I had like the skin crawling. I could not eat. I had a really hard time sleeping. I felt like my heart was racing, and it was like I was a CrossFitter at the time, and I was like, I can't do these workouts anymore because my heart rate is going so high.
I see.
So,
Okay, so
but
yeah, Adderall and Ritalin work with dopamine, and then
mhm,
Stratterra works with norepinephrine. I see.
yes. And so I eventually circled back around to Stratterra, and I was like, that was too much, but also it did the things I needed it to do in some ways. So we just took it way back to like a really, really low dose. And that is probably what I take most often. But by most often, I'd say I take that 50% of the time. And then
So you take them
I,
as needed. If you're feeling a little slow, you'll take it.
yeah, it's actually a little bit more about for the non stimulants, it's a little bit more about like, uh, how much is on my mental plate and how am I handling it? So, like, if I'm feeling really overwhelmed, that's when I find that I take the medication, because it's like when I'm overwhelmed, then like just having the overhead light on or like hearing the buzzing of an outlet will like throw me overboard. So it
Hmm.
just kind of like expands how much sensory stuff and like life stuff that can be thrown at me. But on other days, I will take stuff like thesis, or I just like will have some coffee um, to help
And
manage
thesis
it.
is
Because,
neurotropics and mushrooms like
yeah,
chaga and lion's mane, stuff like that.
yeah, because for context too, like I don't even take Tylenol if I have a headache. Like I'm real crunchy.
Hmm.
So I
Well, I
was
mean,
really,
yeah. Well, and that's something that I'm always thinking about too. I'm actually, because at the time too, I was like doing yoga and all organic, blah blah blah, but I was taking amphetamines, and I
mhm.
wonder, like, in your mind, in the looking forward in your life, do you see yourself like stopping at some point?
Yeah, I think so. That's been my goal since I started, was I want to create a life for myself where I don't feel like I need to take it every day. And I feel like I've gotten a lot closer since changing careers, being my own boss.
Oh yeah.
But at a certain point before this, it was like the reason I decided to try medications was because I had everything else dialed in. I was going to therapy. I was getting 9 to 10 hours of sleep every night. I eat super healthy. I'm exercising. I meditate all the time. And like, I still feel just like so overwhelmed, so behind all the time. And so that's what made me like interested in like, well, let's see what this medication's about. And the first time I had it, I like cried because I thought, oh my gosh, like this, I feel so calm and so like I can handle what's coming at me right now for the first time in my life.
Oh yeah, it does that.
Hmm.
And I think in my experience, you know, when I took medication when I was 15, I was like, this is how I always imagined myself to be.
Hmm.
And in some way, I think that was a really intense thing for a substance to do,
Hmm.
because it forms, at least in my experience, you know, I'm not trying to say your experience,
Yeah.
an instantaneous dependence bond.
Mm.
Because now I say, oh, this is how I really identify. This
Hmm.
is who I always thought I was. So
Ah.
therefore, I need this. And how can I, you know, and then I don't know if you've experienced this on those, but the withdrawals are such a opposite effect
Hmm.
with regular use. You know, the withdrawals create a lot of depression, lethargy, um, prone wanting to sleep, wanting to eat a lot,
Hmm.
and so it's you know, I was really scared to stop.
Yeah, I could see where that would be a really tricky place to be. And that's like, I think it's awesome that you recognized that those were your thoughts around it and then you backed off.
Oh no, I didn't back off.
Oh, eventually?
After that, I took it from 15 till 23,
Hmm.
and I didn't choose to stop taking the medication. Like my insurance wasn't working, blah blah blah, and then I was, you know, I was like fiending, like I was buying them from people, you
Mm.
know, and
Yeah.
because I had a job doing video editing, and I got fired because my videos weren't as good without medication.
Yeah.
And then I committed to not taking medication as a
Mm.
task. And I think that
Yeah.
examination helped me identify those things. And like when you were saying, you know, to get to the core of it, like I get really irritated, like you said, with fluorescent lights or something humming or buzzing. And to get to the core and be like, how can I handle this with
Mhm.
just the power of my mind? Or,
Yeah.
you know, and I don't use nothing. I mean, I drink tea, I take a lot of caffeine occasionally, like I'll like microdose psilocybin and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I just think that the relationship I had with the pharmaceuticals was just too, it was too hard. And after working so hard to break free from it, I, you know, committed to it.
Yeah. I think that's a really good like yeah, example or reflection of for people who maybe are wondering if their relationship with the medication is perhaps leading to an unhealthy dependence. And like that's amazing that you're talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. The medication I almost felt like was in my mind convincing me that it was good. because
Mm-hmm.
on the medication, I was such like a maverick of logic and reason in terms of my own dialogue. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was very more analytical, more prone to breaking things apart in the way I talked. So I was like in my own ear about why these medications were actually good.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a mantra that I told myself a lot, and I see it reflected in the ADHD community a lot. And that is what I used to, because I was, like you said, super crunchy, and I was actually really secretive. I didn't tell anybody I was doing it because I was embarrassed,
Mm-hmm.
and I would always tell myself, this is an unnatural substance for an unnatural world. That because this world is so
Interesting.
demanding with time and productivity and expectations of all this stuff,
Yeah.
that me at my core, I wasn't built for this world. So I have to modify my internal chemistry just to function in this wretched society.
Honestly, I resonate a little bit with that because I often think about like, we are not built for this
Yeah,
society the way that it is right now. And so medication helps us to fit into it a little bit better. But like,
sure.
would I rather live in a society where it wasn't so hard or I was accepted or I didn't need medication to like fit in better? Yes. But am I also okay with being a little bit of a hot mess in this society too? Like, also, yes.
Yeah, just embrace the chaos, and,
Hmm.
and I had to go through a lot. I changed careers,
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. You got to
because,
like figure out your niche.
yeah, yeah, essentially, where do I actually fit?
Hmm.
Instead of me reshaping my consciousness, my chemistry, my nervous system,
Hmm.
what default settings, what can I do?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I feel like it's progressively over time developing skills. And I'm sure that a lot of what you do in your coaching is focused on those kinds of skills,
Yeah. Pretty much
personal,
completely.
yeah, and exercise. Imagine is something you tell people to do a lot, and managing your diet.
Hmm.
And what is your take on like social media and ADHD? Because I feel like it's kind of an ironic loop that there's so much ADHD influencers, and it's like I don't know if looking at 1,000 5-second videos about ADHD every day is going to prime your attention span to be the most productive.
Yeah. I think a lot of different sides of it. I see one side of it of like medical misinformation, like that's problematic. I see the
That's
perspective
probably what
of
I'm doing.
what is it? I see, I'm like, do I go there? I don't know. You're interviewing me. I'm going to talk. I
What's that?
see you're interviewing me, so I'm going to let you bring that up later. Um, I see, yeah, the side of medical misinformation. I see the side that, like, also it's allowing people to see themselves like accurately through the eyes of others. How do I describe that better? Okay, so I used to be, what I mean by saying that is that I used to be a librarian. And one of the things that you think about when you're curating the books for the library is windows and mirrors. You want to get books that are windows so they allow children to see into the lives of others who are different from them, and you want to get books that are mirrors so they're books that children can see themselves reflected into. And I think that there being an ADHD community online is finally creating a space where there's windows and mirrors for people with ADHD, where there wasn't before. And I think that there's a ton of value in that. Um, yeah,
Can
that's,
I
I
can I
like,
provide a counterpoint to that?
sure.
Sometimes I wonder if when we're looking at, so let's say I've been diagnosed ADHD and now my feed is filled with ADHD content,
Hmm.
and there's someone saying like, "Hey, do you have ADHD?" Well, rejection really is upsetting to us, isn't it? And then I'd be
Hmm.
like, "Yeah." And I wonder if slowly some of these things are getting implanted over through repetition, because a lot of it is it's sort of like each ADHD influencer has their RSD video. Each ADHD influencer has their like sometimes caffeine doesn't work video. And then there's all kinds of stuff I see like ADHD and sex. And I'm like, what are we doing here? And I wonder if people are like their identities are being programmed through this in a
Mm.
subtle way sometimes. But also, I mean, what is your thought on that sort of this ADHD echo chamber?
I think that that's a valid point. I also think too that sometimes it can help you figure out who you are when you can see the thing, try it on, see how it feels, and then
Hmm.
decide this feels right for me or this doesn't feel right for me. So I think it's
So it's a window.
okay. Yeah, I think it's okay to present people with the information and let them play with it and then decide if it's not for them or not, for them or not.
Yeah, they have agency. Now I want to get back
Right.
to medical misinformation. Can you give me an
Oh, yeah.
example of medical misinformation? Because I've been accused of this.
Okay. One example, I think that one thing that I try to be particularly aware of is not posting things that are like, if you have this symptom, you have ADHD. And I think I see a good amount of that. And then another thing that, like, a
I don't do
specific,
that.
okay, a specific example would be, what is it? I'm thinking of the word. It's object permanence. People will talk about if you have ADHD, you struggle with object permanence, but like object permanence isn't
That's
and
for toddlers.
related to ADHD. Yeah, it's related to attachment theory. And so there's stuff like that, like terminology, or for say like time blindness, like that's not a term that's in the DSM 5. So, you
Okay, I
know,
agree with you on all this. I was
okay.
expecting to be like, oh, here we go, because really, it's all about the medications for me.
Uh,
But yeah, no, I saw a post yesterday about time blindness, and I thought of it as like time fluidity, and I mean, time is a social construct, but
mhm,
um, and I struggle with time, but it doesn't give me an excuse to show up late.
mhm.
We have to. The world's not going to change. The clocks aren't going away.
Right, right. And that's where sometimes I think there's a balance between with ADHD, like accommodating and accepting. You know, accommodate what you can, be there, show up on time as best you can, put those systems in place to help you. But then on the days that like those fail and you're having a really hard day, that's where you practice the acceptance of like, this is an actual disability. And I'm going to try to be kind to myself while also recognizing how I can do better in the future.
Yeah, yeah, and there is a lot of diagnosing. You're right. Like, I think through a comment, someone told me I had complex trauma, and maybe that's true, but it's just a
That's
comment. You know,
that's weird.
yeah. I was like, maybe I said too much in my comment, but at the same time, it feels that like everything's mental health, and it's a little overwhelming.
Hmm.
That it seems that almost it's just eternal navel gazing at some regard too.
Right. I don't
that
disagree with that.
makes us all very self obsessed. That we're all really like just looking at ourselves. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And then it's turning around. Well, how is that good? And it's like I don't even know.
Right. The information age has led to constant information seeking when really sometimes we just need to be feeling and existing.
Yeah. And I'm curious too about you. And I saw that you're doing a trip to Costa Rica. So what does an ADHD centric Costa Rica trip look like?
This is the first time I'm sharing this out. I actually decided to cancel it.
Okay, tell me why, if
Yeah.
you're okay with that.
Yeah. Well, let me start with why I said yes to it. And then I'll tell you why I decided to say no to it. Okay, so initially the company reached out to me and I was, saying,
What
do you think
company? Like a retreat?
Trova trip?
Oh, okay.
Hmm. They reached out to me, asked if I would be interested in like hosting a retreat. And initially I was like, why? No. Um, and then the more I thought about it, I was like, actually, it's kind of cool because the one major thing that I hear from a lot of clients and that I just know about the ADHD community and from my own experiences is that there's like it's an amazing opportunity when you get to connect with other ADHDers and feel like you're accepted and you're understood. And not a lot of people have like close friendships with other ADHDers, or if they do, it's kind of like few and far between. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we traveled? Because ADHDers love novelty and adventure, and then made those connections. So that's what I went for with it. And then I think in the end, it kind of came down to a few different things. One, I think the price and the location wasn't really a match for, like, despite the feedback that we got from people who gave us feedback and said, this is how much I'll pay, this is where I'd like to go, they said they want to go there, but then no one really signed up, I think, when it came to it. And that's kind of an ADHD thing, difficulty managing budgets and the plans, and then actually like following through without
Yeah.
like a hard deadline. So that was a big thing. And then the other thing was, I was like, I don't feel, initially I was excited about it because of the novelty and like making connections and meeting some followers. But then I was like, I don't know if that is the best role for me to be like hosting a trip, because I am really truly an introvert and I need a lot of downtime. I need a lot of alone time. I can only be on for a certain amount of time a day.
Yeah, it's super
Um,
demanding.
yeah, you're
And
getting one
it's,
of my on hours today.
oh, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most people I know doing retreats to Costa Rica are drinking ayahuasca. So I was like, what are they going to
Yeah, no, no. Yeah.
do?
So I don't know. It just kind of, I think in the end, it came down to a feeling of like the numbers of people signing up weren't there. And then also the feeling of like, I don't know if I'm like excited about this. This doesn't quite feel right anymore. So canceled.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's something to work toward.
Hmm.
Like have you done speaking engagements as a ADHD advocate?
Not beyond like stuff like this, podcasts. I'm doing a little in person thing with one of my old coworkers this month. But yeah, otherwise, that's something I want to get into eventually.
Nice. And I'm curious, I want to, something you wanted to sidebar earlier
Mhm.
was your mention of your clients with their medications versus
Oh,
stimulant
yeah.
versus non-stimulant. What did you want? What was the insight you had on that?
I'm glad you remembered because I would have forgotten. um, One thing that I notice just like anecdotally in conversations with clients is clients who tried medications when they were younger choose not to take medication as adults versus clients who tried medication and were late diagnosed or just wait to try medication until adulthood. They tend to find it a more helpful tool and like feels better for them than the ones who tried it when they were younger.
Oh yeah, I have a theory and a great metaphor for this.
What's that?
Um, well, if you're making pancakes
Mm-hmm.
and you pour the batter into the skillet and you cook one side and then you just pour syrup on that uncooked batter and then you flip it, the pancake's it's still gonna be delicious, but it's gonna be a little bit weird. And I think that
Yeah.
that's our brains, and the syrup is like drugs, and I mean
Yeah.
they're drugs. And you let the pancake finish cooking, and then you put the syrup on. It's not going
Yeah.
to penetrate that pancake because that brain is developed.
Mm.
And I think in that way, my brain, my neural pathway, it was formed on amphetamines.
Mm-hmm.
As I was coming into myself, I was on drugs. So then my like being sober was novel.
Mm-hmm.
And these may not be the proper terms when talking about a prescribed medication, but I saw it as a drug. And that wasn't clear to me until I was in withdrawal. And I said, wow, I'm really behaving like a drug addict in withdrawal. Oh my God, those are drugs.
Yeah.
So I do believe that if something were to change, it would be just keep it relegated for adults and be very sparingly put children on them. Let them grow a little bit. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I think that that perspective kind of aligns with the like some of the stories that clients shared with me. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's growth. And especially because we know that ADHD is an executive functioning, like centric disorder, and the executive functioning is in the frontal lobe.
Mm-hmm.
And we joke all the time that frontal lobes aren't developed till 25.
Yeah. 35 if you have ADHD.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
that means I just got it.
I
Cool.
know.
I'll 35.
Yeah. Around that age.
I hadn't heard that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How
Makes
did they
sense.
figure that out? How, how did they figure that out?
I think it was in my ADCA textbook, but it's like brain scans. I don't know. But I always
Okay.
think about the fact that my fiance is 5 years younger than me, and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That I would be with someone younger.
Oh, because you developmentally?
Yeah, we're on the same page then.
Interesting. And so your full-time job is ADHD coaching?
Yep, coaching and then the content creation is, another part of it too.
And I'm just curious, have you gotten like a sponsorship with Done ADHD?
Hmm. Yeah,
You
I do.
have?
Yeah,
You worked with them?
I've been working with them fairly consistently. Yeah.
Okay, I find them predatory.
You know what? Actually, when we started, when they first reached out to me, I was like, I don't think I want to work with you guys because I kind of had a bad impression of you. And then I had a call with a few people on their team and voiced my concerns with them. And they shared back with me. Granted, I have the ADHD memory, so I cannot just recall this all on the fly with you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that their responses made me feel more confident about working with them and that they had changed directions and beliefs with what type of work they were doing.
Okay. Yeah, because from I read an interview with a nurse practitioner who worked there, and she was like, "This place isn't that. They're all they're doing is pushing medication, even to people who shouldn't be on it."
When did you work there?
I'm not sure. I don't
Okay.
have that detail,
That
but
was,
I know I observe I'm like an Adderall and ADHD historian. I just watch it, and I
yeah.
know that the first one, cerebral, Department of Justice investigation, like a
Hmm.
bunch of they were kind of cooking the books on that, and then a head disappeared. So it's like they're the third business to try ADHD telehealth,
Hmm.
and I just wonder if they're going to be able to outlast it.
Yeah, because there were a few that were inspected by the drug DEA, the drug
Mm-hmm.
whatever enforcement
Yeah,
administration. But that was, I think, things have changed since then. That was like 2021. So,
but do you think an effective ADHD diagnosis can be achieved in a 30-minute Zoom call?
um, I think that, how do I word this well? I think that ADHD treatment is hard to get at the moment. And I think that a person seeking help should get the support that they need. And it's probably going to shake out eventually if they were maybe misdiagnosed. But if the option is this person is like spiraling through life and you need to either wait 6 months to see a neuropsych or to possibly get help, get started on your path to help through an online telehealth platform, like I think that I'd rather that person get potential start to help sooner.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm
But that help
definitely,
being medication in that regard, right?
I don't think it has to be medication, but I think that a diagnosis can be informative for how you can maybe take next steps. But also, I definitely can see the other side of the perspective where it's like perhaps a misdiagnosis can send someone down the wrong path as well. And I don't think that
Mm-hmm.
there's a perfect answer for the situation either way.
Yeah, I mean, I may very well. I don't know if I was misdiagnosed, but I know that in my withdrawal phase, when I think about it, it was like 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Had cerebral been around, I would have not quit
Mm-hmm.
because I would have been able to reestablish that
Mm-hmm.
prescription.
Yeah, that's a good take on that. And I think that is why, yeah, it's important to kind of look into all these things and consider all of them.
Yeah, and I did look into that company, and it's Silicon Valley based. The person running it's an AI specialist, not someone who I don't know. It's a weird company but I don't want to slander them or anything. You're an ambassador. I don't want to get you in trouble.
I think in general, something that does skeeve me out a lot, and that was something that I voiced to them, not just about things that I had seen from them previously, but also other companies like selling supplements and, like services or apps, is that like people are capitalizing on ADHD. And I think that
Hmm.
that's like a little slimy
They're
unless it's
commodifying on your weaknesses.
right. But at the same time, there are some app creators who have ADHD and they made it because it's what worked for them and they want to share it out. And I think there's value in that. It's just how do you parse out without hours of research every single time you encounter a brand or a business?
Yeah, yeah, and it's tricky too because you want to be able to support yourself. You want to make money and stuff like that to live a life,
Right.
and you have to do it. But it's just yeah, something about it rubs me weird, and especially because the ads are always like, hey, I have ADD. And someone's like, oh, gee, Willikers, me too. Oh, I don't know what to do. It's always them talking to themselves.
Yeah.
Every single one. It's like this. They're like, pretend one of you knows about done and the other doesn't. I don't know if that's a prompt that they give you. I don't know how any of that works.
I don't know if I'm at liberty to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough, you know. But I do think that's part of the issue because it reminds me of sort of when cannabis was first legal
Mm-hmm.
and you had to talk to a doctor and they're like, what's your deal? And you're like, oh, I get headaches. They're like, oh, yeah, pretty serious. I guess you need ADHD. I mean, sorry, you need cannabis. So I wonder if this is almost like the stimulant version of that. And then in my thought, I said, what if I just wanted stimulants? You know, and I didn't have to identify as disabled
Mm-hmm.
in order to get a substance I, a well-informed adult, wanted to enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that
Like,
they put that protection around it.
so what are you saying with that? Like that perhaps there shouldn't be the protection there?
Maybe, you know, I could just say like, hey, I have this huge project and I don't take Adderall often, but I would really like one right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in case of deadline, break glass kind of situation.
Yeah. It's almost easy enough to get as it is like right now.
And that's kind of like my beat is just studying the medication. So that's like because I had such a like a love-hate relationship almost with it. So I'm just
Mm-hmm.
following it around, and the history of the medication is fascinating. And I just wonder if it's the right application because amphetamine itself was sort of a drug without a disease for many years. It tried many things. It actually
Mm-hmm.
invented the class of medication known as antidepressant.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was first synthesized for asthma, and it helped a little bit, and they kind of did that, and then it went different places, pilots in World War II, and all kinds of things. But then ultimately, at that time, they said, well, if this drug makes you feel good, it may be feeling bad as a disease.
Hmm.
And so they invented antidepressants to distribute amphetamine. And then when the Controlled Substance Act passed in 1970, it was outlawed to distribute as that, and then Prozac became the antidepressant of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And the companies with this surplus of amphetamine funded research to find new applications for that drug, and they found that students in school who weren't focused were doing a good job with it.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, and then, but it was even prescribed as a weight loss drug
Mm-hmm.
because they were just kind of taking every side effect and just prescribing it for whatever side effect it has. It has so many.
Right.
And then if the desired effect would be your ailment, and then the side effects were still known.
Mm-hmm.
This was very interesting.
That is really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I like to look at the history to kind of, but it makes me very skeptical and untrusting of the pharmaceutical company. I have to
I was
be.
going to say that's really what that tells me is it adds to my lack of confidence in our systems. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are some like red flags for that I worry about, at least like in my future, because I've taken thousands of amphetamines,
Mm-hmm.
and it may have done a number on my nervous system, my cardiovascular system,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some evidence that those drugs may cause things like Parkinson's in late age because you're overstimulating the dopamine receptors and
Interesting.
stuff like that.
There was research that just came out, like I want to say it was either like late 2023, maybe, about how they found I think it was correlation, not causation,
Hmm.
with with heart like issues. Stimulants were.
Yeah, on them you can have a heart event, and I moved a blood clot on Adderall.
Oh God, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it can happen.
Yeah.
But and but have you ever, like, I'm curious with your medication and your use, have you found in yourself any side effects that you sort of are things you have to deal with, things you don't
Mhm.
necessarily love that they cause?
Yeah, yeah. That's why I don't take my stimulants very often. But I'd say the biggest thing is I know if I am taking the Ritalin one day, then the next day is going to be not great. Like it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be a low productivity day, which I
Because you're in
think,
withdrawal.
well, I don't know if I think of it so much as withdrawal. I think it's more because I notice the same thing when I don't take medication. Um, and just like the natural energy cycles that I tend to go through, I go through like high periods of productivity and then I fall off because I've used all my energy up. And then I'm kind of in like a mini burnout. And then I've rested enough where I hit another high period of productivity and on and on. And that has been my journey, has been like trying to get myself to level out just naturally by managing my energy a little bit better. But when I need it, I will take the Ritalin, and if I like have a lot to do, but knowing that the next like day, maybe 2 days, I'm going to need to like rest because I will have used a lot of energy that was um, like artificially brought onto me.
Mm-hmm. So you typically don't take it like 2 days in a row?
Rarely, yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
See,
for
you're
a
doing it so
month,
healthy.
yeah, I'd say like in a month, I will have it between like 0 and 5 times, probably.
Wow, that's pretty good. That seems like a healthy relationship.
Yeah, I would say
Good
so.
for you.
Thanks.
Yeah, because I wonder if I'd have this adversarial perspective had I not like taken it every day. You know, 20
Well,
to
I think
30
that that
milligrams.
also probably comes with my experience of never trying it until adulthood. So I was coming at it with a mostly fully formed brain, you know, versus coming at it from an adolescent
Yeah,
brain.
who's like, this is a shiny, this is fun, this is cool.
Right.
I like this.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Thanks.
But and I don't know about that. Another thing I want to ask is you have a master's degree in libraries.
Library science. Well, it's learning design and technology, but it's my librarian master's. Yeah.
Are you a big reader?
Um, I read every day, but some people would say it's not reading because it's audiobooks mostly, because that is how I need to consume my information to absorb it best.
What are some of your favorite books?
Oh my
Having it
gosh.
really into reading.
I love like fantasy, sci-fi, especially like fantasy romance is like the kick I've been on the last year or so. But I also spent a lot of years reading a ton of like nonfiction self-help type books.
Yeah, I think everyone should go through a little phase of that. What's your
Yeah.
favorite self help book? Or which one was there one that like actually helped you? I feel like that's kind of digging through the mess, and then you're like, this one.
Oh, I think one thing I'm also like kind of in the spiritual world. Oh, and I got to let you know I have a hard stop like in just a minute or two
Okay,
because I have a client. But one book is called The Instruction. It's totally woo woo and talks
like
about like
manifestation.
no, it's more about like past lives.
Mm,
Um, but that was something that was pretty world changing. And then Eckhart Tolle, The Power of
Power of
Now
now.
was a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you read Many Lives, Many Masters? I know.
I've heard of that one. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah. Can I send you a copy of my book?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Well, since
Thanks.
you only have a couple more minutes, first
Sorry.
I want to thank you so much for being open and honest about that and letting me ask these questions.
Yeah. No, that was
Which,
great.
and is there anything else that you'd want to add?
Not that I can think of now. No.
Okay. Where can people find you and your stuff?
Yeah, so all of my socials are Kelly Baums, KELLYBAUMS. That's also my website. I do coaching, I do one on one coaching and group coaching. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and reaching out.
Yeah, thanks for the interview. That was fun.
Yeah, I think hopefully this dialogue can help some people.
Yeah, I hope so too.
All right, Kelly, have a great weekend.
Thanks, you too. Bye.